Welcome back to everyone. Today we'll be talking about digestion, and in digestion there is actually quite a big chapter, so we'll be breaking this video into multiple parts. So first of all, we will go through the classes of food. Classes of food, in a sense, what are the different nutrients group that's available that we usually eat. So we usually require nutrients. So living organisms require nutrients for healthy growth and development. And most of these nutritional group will contain these elements that can be found in the periodic table: your carbon, your oxygen, and hydrogen. So carbon, the symbol is C, oxygen is O, and hydrogen is H. So living organisms tend to depend on these essential nutrients, and for us to actually take in all these things, right, our body has a few functions. For example, digestion and absorption. Now, more importantly, why do we want to eat? What is the important purpose for having food? So a common exam question that they will ask is stating what are some of these reasons or the value or the benefits of actually eating. So first of all, food sources are the main way we actually obtain energy. Okay, we do not have cells that can undergo photosynthesis to convert light energy into chemical potential energy. So in this case, we eat food in order to obtain energy to carry out essential living processes and function. So these food substances will then allow us to carry out some activity or processes such as to grow, to repair, and to reproduce. To grow new cells, to grow taller, to grow bigger in size, to repair worn out tissues, to repair worn out cells, and of course to reproduce, to grow newer cells, to at the same time to be able to continue our existence. So sometimes some of these substances can also be used to maintain good health and to also help fight infection or diseases. So there are many classifications of nutrients, such as the main ones we'll be talking about is mainly food, fats, proteins, carbohydrates. These are the key ones that usually comes up for exam, and of course water. When we look at minerals and vitamins, we don't really see much of a change being tested. So I will just need you to spend time to understand more on fats, proteins, carbohydrate, and water. So let's look into it. So fats, what are actually fats? Fats are commonly found in your butter and margarine, and of course your cooking oil, even cheese. And the three main elements that makes up fat are your carbon, your hydrogen, and oxygen. So along the way, you also see that these are the three main elements that are present, except in protein where it contains other form of elements as well. Okay, some source of fats can contain twice as much of energy as carbohydrate, meaning right, when you eat fat, right, you for the same amount of fat, like you eat 1 gram of fat versus 1 gram of carbohydrate, you actually get more energy from fats. And one purpose of actually why do we want to have fats, right, is so as to keep us warm. So there is some form of body insulator for heat to keep our body warm and help maintain body temperature. Now, it is important to maintain the body temperature because most of our body reaction involves enzymes, which we will cover later on. So enzymes are these special kinds of proteins or substances that helps to break down your food substances into simpler, more soluble areas for absorption. Your protein, some common source are your fish, eggs, meats, peas, nuts, and milk. They mainly made up of, you can see you still have your key essential carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, but you have an addition of nitrogen, sulfur, and phosphorus. So this is just a special type for protein only. Okay, and that what is the main purpose of protein? So like let's say you want to build muscles, you take protein powder and things like this. It's mainly required for the growth of new cells. As most cells, they tend to be protein in nature, and most of your substance are also protein in nature. Okay, so it is required for building your enzymes, and of course your hormones. Hormones are different from enzymes. Enzymes helps to break down items. Hormones help to stimulate growth or other forms of response activity. Okay, and that it can also act as a source of energy during starvation, meaning that you fail to eat, you don't eat. It will be used as an energy source first. Next, we look at carbohydrates. So carbohydrate is something like sugar or even starch. So the three main classes of carbohydrates are your starch, cellulose, and sugar. Okay, and then these are your big carbohydrate molecule groups. Again, you can see that it contains carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, very similar to fat. However, if we look at the proportion of the elements in fats versus carbohydrate, they are actually quite different. So carbohydrate, they tend to follow a certain fixed ratio, whereas for fats, they don't. Protein, the difference is you actually have other elements like your nitrogen, sulfur, and phosphorus as compared to your carbohydrate or fats. Why carbohydrates? Carbohydrates is our main source of energy. How so? Our body undergoes respiration, and for respiration we need to utilize glucose. So glucose is an example of carbohydrate. That's why it's our primary source for energy. Next, we look into digestion. So what is digestion for, or the process of the importance of digestion? So for digestion, it is mainly to break down substance into smaller soluble ones such that our body is able to absorb and to utilize. Okay, there are two main types of digestion: physical digestion and chemical digestion. So for physical digestion, okay, while it's involved in breaking food down into smaller soluble pieces, no enzyme is involved. For example, if you use your teeth to chew your food into smaller pieces, your food is still the same food. It's just that it's just broken down into smaller areas only. So that is an example of physical digestion. And the intention of physical digestion is mainly to increase the surface area for your food particles to act on. Now, what do we mean by this increased surface area? This increased surface area is to widen that area of exposure so that other molecules are able to interact with it. For example, let's say you want to dry your clothes faster. So rather than you crumple your clothes, you tend to open it up. By opening it up, you are increasing the surface area of exposure so that more light energy is able to hit. For food wise, you want to break it down such that the inside of the food is also exposed to the enzymes for breakdown. Why? Because you want it to break down fast enough such that your body is able to actually absorb all these nutrients fast enough as well. So other examples of physical digestion are like a peristalsis. Peristalsis is the rhythmic-like motion of your alimentary canal. So your muscles, they tend to move in and out like a wave. And this will help to push food downwards to your body, to the respective organs. Churning action in the stomach is something like your stomach is actually vibrating to actually mix the food well enough such that the enzymes are able to break it down properly. But do take note, this is not digestion. Digestion involves the enzyme. For here, you are just trying to mix the enzyme together with the food. And of course, emulsification in the small intestine, we will cover this more often. Emulsification is where you use this compound, the bile, to help to break down a large fat molecule into a smaller fat molecule. You are not creating something new. Bile is not an enzyme, but it's just a substance, a chemical substance to help to break it down to smaller pieces to increase surface area for the enzyme lipase to act on it. Okay, then you have chemical digestion. Chemical digestion is very, very straightforward. It helps to break down large insoluble food into smaller soluble substance where you can actually be absorbed. And in this case, enzymes are generally involved. Okay, so what happens is whenever you see enzymes are involved, you will actually create a new substance. You will create a new particle at the end of the day. So what will happen is this digestion will actually help to ensure that your body is able to absorb all these nutrients. Okay. So next we look at digestive enzyme. So enzymes are made up of proteins, and that the main definition of enzymes is that they are just biological catalysts that will help to speed up chemical reactions in living organisms. They are generally not used after digestion as they remain chemically unchanged. So when you remain chemically unchanged, you could see that the enzymes are always able to be reused. And when you are able to reuse the enzyme, you don't really have to produce newer enzymes, so the reaction will be faster. Okay, in a sense, number one, you save time in creating new enzyme. Okay, now this is an example of the lock and key hypothesis, which can be used to describe how the enzyme and the substrate work. So why do we use the word substrate? Substrate is given to the name of the food substances that will interact with the enzyme before it gets broken down. So in this case, this will be known as the substrate, and of course the enzyme. When it's broken down into simpler substances, we call this the product. Now over here, what we will see is these funny looking shaped things, right? These are generally the active site of the enzyme. These active sites are important to accept the substrate, to feed it properly into the enzyme, so that we can see the enzymes are actually very specific. They only like a particular food substance based on its shape. Okay. So when the enzyme combines with the substrate, you will form the enzyme substrate complex, and after that what will happen is the substrate will actually be broken down into the products. Great details into these are not really so much required for your exam, but if you want to look at an equation, you could see something like a substrate involved when reacted with an enzyme, you will actually form a product. Okay, so you can see that the enzyme looks more of like a lock, and then the substrate is like a key to be fitted into that lock. Okay, and when the substrate is already broken down into the products, it can no longer fit into the shape of the active site. It gets removed out of the enzyme's active site, leaving the enzyme again, and you can see that the enzyme is not broken down, it's still of the same shape and size. So enzymes are very specific, and the thing that gives it its specific property is the active site. Okay, so each enzyme is only able to catalyze a specific substrate and nothing more. So the action of enzymes on food is generally classified as chemical digestion, as these foods are able to create a new substance, and that the food is further broken down through chemical reaction to form even simpler soluble substance, so that you are able to actually absorb all these nutrients either through diffusion or active transport. So the simple and soluble substances are then able to pass through the wall of the small intestine for absorption into the body. Okay, now it is required of you to remember the names of the enzyme, where is it digested, and then the action of the digestion. That means the ones that are highlighted in yellow, these are known as these are actually known as your substrate. The ones that are highlighted in green, these are known as your products. And of course, over here, we look at the enzyme, which are highlighted in maybe pink. Or purple. Okay. Now, try not to use the word carbohydrates. And breaks down carbohydrates into simpler substance. This generally is not really recommended in exam. The rest is. So these are some of the things. Along the way, subsequently I'll go through with you greater details as to which one should be matched. But what you can see is that starch can only be broken down by amylase to form maltose. And it will only form maltose. It cannot form glucose or anything immediately. Okay, to form glucose, you will need to get maltase, which is another enzyme, to break down maltose to form glucose. Okay, and in the next video, we'll be talking more about the human digestive system. You may want to take the time to first understand and maybe watch this video again to get a better idea of what enzymes are and the purpose of nutrients before we actually move into digestion, which can be quite a lot to remember. Okay.